Good morning, I'm Tim Monahan, founder of Analytic Risk Technology, and I'm going to give you a quick overview of the Qubit stress testing suite. And it's a good time to be talking about stress testing. We just had the Bank of England publish their stress test results. We had the EBA do theirs a couple of weeks earlier. So we've had hundreds of people across hundreds of banks working on this solidly all year. And it's a big regulatory effort. And it's worth remembering in this compliance world where a lot of the actual focus of regulators is on capital. We've got stress testing, we've also got MREL and TLAC. And in this part of the world, actually it's not about compliance. Yesterday we had the get past compliance as a noun. I think you want to get past compliance as a word. You don't comply with the scenario, you analyze your business under it, which is what we're doing here. So I need to show you this so you understand why it's a hard problem. We've got the scenarios coming in at the top. They need to be mapped into things that can be made sense of within the business. The scenarios tend to be very high level, macro GDP unemployment numbers. You have to map those through every portfolio in all of your businesses and roll them up into what that means for capital. Very hard problem because all of the losses and RWA numbers come from your risk functions, but the shape of your capital is only understood by your finance function. And these are some of your standing stones that really don't like to talk to each other. And the data doesn't talk to each other. And you know, this is, after all, a data strand. This is what the result of a stress test looks like. This is actually a real bank. I've taken data from the EBA publication. It's quite nice they do that. So this is only a top level. It's the amount they publish. I can very quickly ingest that into our model because we've got template models for the PRA and EBA exercises, CCAR coming soon. The top part of the dashboard is the evolution of the CET1 capital, which is the key ratio. So the red line is the baseline, blue line is the adverse scenario. We need the waterfall. We always look at waterfalls in stress tests to understand what's going on, starting the ending point. But you've got things happening in different directions. You've got impairments, you've got RWAs moving, which is the denominator, but then you're also paying less tax and dividend. So it's actually quite hard to reason about. You need to see all of that. This is the reporting that comes out of our tool. Of course, we actually have to manage it in the tool. This is the web-driven front end of the Qubit tool. We have all of the regulatory definitions that come from our standard model. Across the tool, we manage the workflow of bringing in all the data from all of those moving parts that I showed you earlier, and that builds up the capital model. We don't just sit down and go, oh, look, our capital's depleted. We want to do something about it. So what I've modeled here, because this is a real bank, is what they've done since the stress test. So this particular bank has actually raised some extra funds. They've raised 2 billion of equity capital. They've bought a Bulgarian bank and they've been hit with some compliance charges because of their conduct on Irish mortgages. We apply those as offsets into the model and generate a new scenario on the fly and apply the impact and see what happens. So we can now start to actually manage that. So if we go back to our dashboard and look at the CET1, now we can look at the management action view, and we've now got, particularly at the end of that, they're starting to feel a bit uncomfortable with where they are, that fundraising comes back. So now we can start to do something. We've got a capital model, we can apply impacts to it. One of the interesting things we might want to say is, how bad does it have to get before we break? Reverse stress testing. We have to take that through all of those levels in the Big First model. So I've got a scenario generating piece. So what I'm doing here is quite high level. We're going to take the scenarios we've got in the EBA scenario and crank them up, just make them worse. So first level of a vector autoregressive model, just make the scenario worse. We see we've got a really heavy double dip recession now. We then take that through the level of credit modeling. Credit is the first order driver for this bank. And we model non-performing loans and provisions, generate new RWAs and impairments for those, and put them into capital. So here is the capital tab. And so our starting, sorry, mouse has gone sticky. Starting CT1 doesn't look that bad. We start cranking up the scenario and we break about there. because that's below our 4.5% under which we lose our banking license. And that's a scenario that had about 18% unemployment in it. What I was doing there was cranking that through my API. So controlling from this dashboard the scenario, pumping the numbers into the model, getting the answers back again in real time at the press of a button, as opposed to 6 months of analyst effort. Thank you very much.